All right, everybody. Well, just want to welcome you guys all back to our KECO Live series. This is week 3 of an 8-part series. And really, the purpose of this is designed to make sure we help bridge the gap between investors and lenders, right? Whether you do business with us or not, the idea is to make sure that you guys come equipped, you guys are ready to go, and we can provide you guys the insights that you guys need that maybe you guys might not know. Plus, if you guys have questions, this is where we come into play. But today's agenda, we're going to talk about any learning lessons that anyone has had this week, ourselves included. We're going to talk about some market updates and current events. So one of the things that we've kind of mentioned a little bit was just the cost of fuel appraisals going up. Leverage allocation, this is a big one. I think everyone that is investing needs to understand it. Most people are just so focused on rate or points. For us, it's a lot more than that. And we're going to help walk through that process. John has a deal breakdown for us of a project that we've worked on and the little hurdles that we had to jump through to make it come to fruition. After that, we're going to have the questions and answers and go from there. So just to start, anybody got any lessons that they've learned this past week or anything they want to bring up that they saw out there in the markets or what they're doing?
The biggest one was realizing how much the rental cars and flights affect appraisals.
Affect the appraisal costs.
I didn't realize that. I mean, in Hawaii especially, you have, if appraisers are coming from off island, they have to fly in, and then they have to typically rent a car, right? And they factor all that into what their appraisal cost is going to be. And so because this one's on the Big Island, it's like by HPP side, I guess the flights and the car rentals are just super expensive right now. Sherry was saying that one of the car rentals that they had for a day was like $450. So, I mean, it jumped high to the appraisal. Yeah, just for one day. I mean, that could be from anywhere, right? Like that's in Hawaii just because we're here, but that could really happen anywhere in the US, you know. Like I remember when, I think it was COVID, when the rental cars in Hawaii were super expensive. Everyone's renting U-Hauls to drive around.
That was everywhere. I remember that. Yeah, that was like a whole trend on social media back then. All the rental cars.
Yeah. Well, appraisers were raising their prices, like doubling it, and then they're like 30 days out too. So all costs went up.
This was during COVID, or you're talking about during the rate when the rates dropped?
Yeah, when the rates dropped. Yep.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. I mean, one of the appraisers we got a few days ago. Well, actually, this borrower is kind of just, he's thinking it's more expensive because the last one we got was like 800 and then this one's 1100. But the one he got 2 years ago for the same property was with the same AMC and it was $1,000 2 years ago. So $100 more is not that, you know, out of the ordinary, I think.
Yeah.
People just need to realize that AMCs kind of charge what they're going to charge.
Yep.
You know, yeah, that's like the AMCs, title, insurance. Insurance is a big one too. You know, sometimes a lot of carriers, sometimes there's only one carrier, you know, who can give builder's risk or do a certain area. Maybe if it's in a lava zone or landslide zone.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think because they did a house that's not in any of those zones or in a different market and they paid half the price that it's supposed to be the same nationwide, which is just not. That's not the case.
Market dependent.
I think a lot of them are pulling out too. Like we're working on that one in DC and the insurance is just not going to, we got to go look for another insurance elsewhere, right? After these guys are the ones that all the time come through and able to get us insurance on this particular deal because of the condo conversion, they don't have it, right? So now we got to go on the hunt to find.
Yeah, I had two or three. Anyway, multiple insurance companies pass on one of our ground ups because they don't have a carrier that services that area. All the little things that I think a lot of people, maybe they don't, it's kind of a hard thing to teach, right? If you're teaching real estate investing or fix and flips to nationwide or even to multiple markets, is like you could have something come up in one market that kind of affects the whole real estate strategy that you have going on. You know, that doesn't really work nationwide. Like real estate works nationwide, but how specific you are with your strategy is not.
Yeah, that's only something, it's only something experience can teach you across different markets like we're doing.
Yeah.
Every market has like its different nuances. And like usually it's not in like the fundamentals are enough where you can get it done. But if you get whacked by enough of those nuances that you don't know, like all of them, then yeah, it could do some major damage.
Yeah. Well, I see it the most with guys who they jump into a new market for the first time. You know, like they crush it in their local market because they've been there forever. They know the players, they understand, you know, the economics
Yeah.
behind it. But then they jump out to wherever, right? Or like we see a lot of Hawaii people go out to Kansas. And maybe because there's a lot of people from Hawaii doing Kansas, if you don't understand that local market or have boots on the ground there, then and you're just jumping over because everyone else from your market is going over, you can
You
get
get
burned out pretty
demolished out
quick.
there. That's like a lot of California investors when they come to Vegas for the first time, they're
Yeah.
buying out there. Like my borrower, he had 2 rental properties, owned it for several years in Summerlin. He was cash flowing a little bit, but when he sold it last year, he said he just broke even. So he's like, yeah, I'm not going to invest in Vegas for now. All Bay Area.
You kind of got to go all in to a market that you're going to market and a strategy, right? Like if you're doing fix and flip, you're used to doing fix and flip, but now you're going to do ground up construction. The numbers are, I want to say way different. It kind of depends on the market, but there's some costs associated and timelines that people don't realize that can eat
Yeah.
into your deal, especially if you're not being conservative in the beginning.
A lot of factors. Yeah.
John, didn't you have another one? Was it something with title?
Oh, you mean the endorsements? Yeah, we touched on it last week, but that is an important lesson. I mean, just picking the right title company, guys, can kill or delay your deals. So title company that
Yeah.
understands how to close investor deals. This particular title company was more so used to doing conventional loans. There was a lot of back and forth that caused a day and a half delay just because title couldn't get in agreement with the underwriting team regarding the endorsements and the type of insurance that they needed. So I think that's something that is a lot of times not talked about as much within a real estate deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one thing to note too is like you have teams when it comes to investing, right? You have the investors, the GCs, the wholesalers, we're all kind of working together to get a deal through along with all their vendors. On the origination side, you have your processors, your LOs, your underwriters, then you have the third party people, you have title, insurance, AMCs, and then trying to get all those people to work together, right? To make a deal successful from the beginning on the origination side to closing. And then even having to dispo the deal. If you refinance later, then making sure you have a good property management team or something on the back end. But yeah, it's a lot of making groups of people work successfully together, I think is something that's probably overlooked a lot, especially with newer investors.
I think it's also good to touch on what we call it closing energy. So we're all in a position, just like Kane said, we're trying to get everyone on the same page to work cohesively together. And we're not in a position to be able to just sit back and hope that it's going to get figured out just because it's title's job or it's insurance's job to figure this out. We're in a position where we're playing it, trying to get everyone on the same page, make sure the deal's moving forward. Whatever we can do to do that, that's what we typically do here.
Yeah, it's big for, I mean, even after the property closes, right? And now it's time to start construction. You got to work with your architects, your engineers, everyone, the government sometimes, right? To get permits and planning. And sometimes, like we have a deal right now that's it's going over, one of our borrowers is going over timeline a little bit because of waiting for architects, right? To get plans back. And I think he's on multiple already. He's gone through like 2 or 3 of them. But having closing energy from the beginning, especially when everything's smooth, when it's like a clean slate deal, just closed, having the closing energy so you're not 6 months down the road, 9 months down the road, and still trying to figure out how you're going to get your plans approved. Not to say that it can really be avoided. Like if it's going to take a while to get something approved, like it might just happen, but at least you're more prepared for getting it done in time if you have the closing energy from the beginning. GCs also, right? Like how many times do you hear about when a flipper or someone that has a GC that's supposed to be working a project and they take off with the money or they're not finishing tasks that are supposed to be done in a certain amount of time and now the project's going over. It's a lot of just managing people and managing teams. And so the more teams that you can align with to kind of help get through these, even if it's just someone to lean on or like hear what your problems are, like maybe there's referrals, because I mean the real estate space is small still. Like for as big as it is, all the players kind of know each other. So you can lean on those relationships to like if you need a GC, if you need title, if you need insurance or whatever, you have a community of people that are doing this every day. We're still in the relationship business. I think real estate will be one of those industries that I don't know if it'll ever drift from that, even with AI and everything.
Yeah, I'll add upon that as far as a learning lesson. We got a deal we're working on, and this one does have some fire damage on it. And to get the final approval, which is it is in final approval right now and in underwriting, we needed what's called an engineering survey. And if we're going to talk about relationships, luckily, the investor who is doing this, the relationship that he has with the person that generates this engineering survey is actually going to be the general contractor for the project. So usually that thing takes longer. We got it done very quickly. Looks like everything looks good. But just as a reminder, you know, relationships definitely is important. But anytime you're doing any kind of fire damage, guys, there is a secondary, almost like appraisal kind of essence, but it's called an engineering survey. And they just want to make sure that the structural integrity of the home is there, foundation is there, and everything else is. So yeah, just one of the things that I found that might give you guys some tips if you're looking at any kind of fire damage homes, it is possible. Oh, one more thing to add, when you're doing a fire damage home, they do like to see that you have done one before in the past, right, Kane? I think we're kind of going over that.
Yeah.
This particular investor has a lot of experience and they feel a lot better that the general contractor has done these kind of projects before as well. So that's what made it a little bit more easier to make sure that we were able to move forward with it. But just a lesson there.
Keely, when it comes to fire damage, do you notice, is there a level of fire damage that needs to happen before they require that report, or is it any level?
Yeah, so I think it's really any level. I mean, I say I think because it really just depends, but I know when you hear fire damage, the red flags go off, right? And I think the best way to think about it as if you were lending the money, what would you want to see, right? Wouldn't you want to make sure that the integrity of the building is going to be good? So that's the lens that I kind of look at things too as well. And if you guys can look at it in that lens, it makes more sense of why they would ask for additional.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing that's important to note, everyone from the lenders, the note buyers, and the operators, like the flippers, the new construction, the builders, everyone's an investor at some point, right? Just because they have a different investing strategy. Sometimes the note buyers are investing in the note, right? The lenders are investing in the note, but the flipper, right, or the real estate investor is investing in, they're using the property as a vehicle, right? Where the lender is using the note as the vehicle. And so it all comes down to ROI. And the lenders and note buyers are going to be kind of the model that you want to use in terms of investing. If you want to be a high level investor, not a just considered a house flipper, right? If you want to be a sophisticated investor, what note buyers and lenders do that a lot of flippers don't do is they focus on ROI and profit first, rather than just looking at a deal from a very shallow stance. I had an investor call me the other day saying that they want to do a fix and flip, right? But it's like it's kind of a white elephant in the neighborhood. So this property is going to be worth $3 million, they say, but everything in that neighborhood sells for $1 million. The square footage is bigger, everything's bigger. But when it comes to selling that property, if someone's going to buy a $3 million property, why would they buy in this neighborhood versus a property or across the street where that neighborhood, everything sells for $5 million or 3 to 4, everything's more like kind. And so I think a lot of investors, they get very wide-eyed with a high dollar and they think because it's in a neighborhood and it's the nicest one in the neighborhood that the value's there. But if you're looking at it as a note buyer or a lender and what they consider a good investment, you're not going to buy the most expensive. You want to buy the one that's safe.
Yeah, the lenders never like to be the highest,
Yeah.
highest sold comp in the neighborhood. The one
I
that
mean,
sets-
like in general, it's kind of fundamentals. You don't want to be the highest comp, right? Because then you're setting the ceiling. Especially, yeah, if you're going to be the highest comp, I mean, there's got to be a good explanation behind it. So what happened to that one though?
Oh, so this is the one that the track's not going to qualify, right? So this is the other thing, right? Lenders are looking at not only the collateral, the deal itself, but they're looking at the deal driver, the executor, who are they going to deploy capital to, who's going to make that return, and they want to see the experiences there, right? And so because this investor's only done, he kind of fat figured his track record that he sent to me. So one of the ARVs that he wrote was 3.9 million. But then when I look further into it, he added an extra zero. So it was only 390,000, where this one, the ARV is going to be 3 million. So jumping from a $300,000 ARV to a $3 million ARV is a huge difference, right? Regardless of what market it's in. You're talking about doing a starter home where like the finishes and everything are completely different. It's a different buyer completely. And so they look for different things. And so yeah, you have experience doing a bunch of $100,000 flips, $200,000 flips, but now you want to get into the luxury space. It's a completely separate market. And
How
so,
would they, how would somebody have to qualify? They have to get somebody with experience to do the project with them?
yes and no. I mean, another part of it too is like you can maybe qualify it with a bunch of LOEs. Like maybe it's a very cosmetic flip, maybe it's worth 3 million already and he's just getting a super deep discount. The $3 million homes are selling like hotcakes. You can maybe make a case for that. But at the end of the day, like I said, the note buyers and lenders are all investors also. So you have to make a strong case for this being a good deal that they would deploy $3 million or whatever the loan amount, 1.5, you know. And like all investors, you're looking at, you want to start with your end goal and then reverse engineer work backwards, right? So you want to look at your ROIs, your profits, what your investing strategy is, and then work backwards to see, okay, does my strategy align with whatever my end goal is? So an example, the biggest difference I see is between like the Hawaii fix and flip market and maybe Phoenix. Las Vegas too. Las Vegas is really fast, where you turn properties in Hawaii minimum, what, 6 months, 9 months. On average, conservatively, you want to be a year, sometimes even 18 months. So a year is probably pretty safe. Where in Phoenix, they turn houses in 3 weeks. They close on it, they have their demo crew in, they're flipping the whole thing in 3 to 4 weeks, and it's back on market. So you can get away with a lower ROI because you can redeploy that capital over and over, right? So say you're getting a 10% ROI in a Phoenix flip, but you're able to do 10 projects that year, right? Simple math, you're doing about 100% ROI versus you're in Hawaii, you're maybe doing one project a year, 2 projects a year, depending how much capital you have to deploy. And you can maybe make the same return, but you need to make a higher ROI to hit your annual ROI that you're aiming for.
You just have to do more deals.
Yeah, you have to do more deals. But that also comes at a price because if you're doing more deals, if you're getting a very small ROI per deal, right? And something happens in the market and you get to take a 10% hit, COVID happens, whatever. Like we know a lot of investors in Vegas and Phoenix, especially the two hottest markets for low dollar, quick turn fix and flips, who had 20 projects out, 30 projects out because they had X amount to deploy. And instead of getting a higher ROI, because the market turns so fast, they spread it out through a bunch of small deals. But now they plan to exit in 3 months and 6 months. And then rates hike, COVID happens, whatever, this new virus that I just heard about, like we don't really know what's going to happen with the market. And if you hold it longer than, if you weren't as conservative because the market was hot before, you see a lot of investors lose a lot of money, which is what we're not in the business of, right? We're in the business of being conservative about being good investors, not just house flippers. And I think sometimes people fall into that, that debt trap of trying to just do more and more rather than getting more bang for their buck and being tighter on their fundamentals with investing.
Yep.
I think this is perfect. And I think this leads right into what we're going to be talking about next, Kane, right? Leverage allocation, right? And I think if we talk about that, that puts the investors and everyone in line with what is most important, right? So with that being said, Johnny, did you want to take this one down, brother?
Yeah, leverage allocation. I know Kate was just touching on it, and we're talking about wrapped interest. Basically, with our fix and flipping ground construction products, wrapped interest pretty much eliminates your monthly carrying costs. So it gives you more capital to allocate towards other projects, or if you want to go close on more deals, you use that as a down payment. Kate, I know you had some other points on this one specific too. Did you want to add to that?
I mean, this all comes down to starting with your ROI and your profit and working backwards, right? For sure, in the Hawaii market, in LA, in Miami, the wrapped interest, the advanced draws makes a huge difference. I mean, it's all case by case, right? It's deal scenario. If you compare apples to apples, which one's going to be better? What's your holding time? But a lot of investors, especially starting out, they focus on rate and points as their two main drivers on if a deal is going to make sense. Where if you focus on ROI and profit and then work backwards, that's where you'll get your true numbers on which one makes more sense, right? And how the leverage should be allocated. High dollar market, especially one that's not turning fast. The wrapped interest and advanced draws don't really work as much if you're in Phoenix, right? And you're turning in a month. But if you're in Scottsdale, right down the road, and it's high dollar, and they're going to be in for 6 months, then it starts to make more sense.
Knowing the pulse of the market, and then knowing what tools you need, like what type of product, right? Because wrapped interest and high leverage kind of doesn't mean as much if you're in a quick turn market, right? If that's the case, then you're looking for speed and low cost. But in markets that we hang out in, like Hawaii or the loans that we do across the nation in the high dollar markets, it's usually substantially more beneficial as an investor. Because I guess the main point, right, of leverage allocation, like what exactly is it? It's in the name, right? It's like, how is that leverage allocated in your loan? Because it could sound the same and look the same, but it's definitely not the same, right? You want to understand that. And why do we have to understand it? It's because our job as investors is to get a return on our investment. That's our job, right? It's not to get the most profit, actually, right? And that's why one thing to keep in mind is that, especially like teams like us, if somebody's really sensitive about the rate and they're not in a quick turn market or anything like that, then it's kind of a red flag that they're either new or they don't understand the leverage, right? Because if you're an investor, it's not about getting the most profit, it's getting the most return on your investment.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, we talk to investors all the time, right? Bring up ROI and they don't even, it's like they've never heard of it before. You know, especially the ones who like they're kind of in their ways. They think they're super experienced because they do 10 a year and their whole goal is to make, you know, 50,000, 20,000 a house. But then when I asked them how much of their own cash or how much private money that they deploy into that deal specifically, they couldn't tell you, right? Because there's a big difference between putting in $50,000 of your own money and making 50,000 or putting in $5,000 of your own money and making 50,000, you know, because that same 5,000 you can deploy 10 more times and do 10 times the amount of deals to deploy that same 50,000 that you would have on the second deal. Example is like if you're getting maybe someone's getting 7% and half a point, right? Let's just be kind of out there with this, right? But they're getting 80% on the purchase, 80% on the rehab, right? Like a 80-80. All day long, a 90% purchase and 100% rehab with wrapped interest and advanced draws is going to be better, even at like you could probably charge 4 points and like a 12% rate, right? Because of where the capital is being allocated. Just getting 10% more on the purchase, right? The difference between 80 and 90%. On $1 million loan, that's what, $100,000. You're going from an $800,000 leverage to $900,000 leverage. And then if you're talking about the wrapped interest that you're holding for 12 months, talk about $10,000 a month going out every month versus having it wrapped in.
At what point does wrapped interest really start making a difference on the ROI deal? Is it 1 month, 2 months?
I could probably break down the numbers. I've seen on average is about 4 months, pretty much after 4. I mean, it kind of depends too on like the purchase price, what the cash to close is. Because if you're doing, you know, if you have high leverage on $1 million loan and you have $10,000 a month going out every month, it's way different than if you're doing a $200,000 loan and you only have, you know, 2,000 going. It depends how much private capital you have also, right?
That's what I was just gonna mention, Kane. It depends how much money you gotta take on, right? If you have to raise money for your monthly payments, right, and you are gonna wrap your payments into the loan, you actually don't even need none of that money, right? In essence, it's less risk, less worry about it because it's already there and it's already servicing the loan, right? So that's what I was just gonna point out is the private.
I would say 7 months, like most markets it's not like a quick turn because you have to buy it, you got to renovate it, and you got to put it on market, right? So, and even if you put it on market and you get an offer the day of, that's like still a 30-day close, right? So that's like 1 month there, 1 month on the front, and then you got at least a month for renovations. The majority of the time you want the leverage. Majority of the time you want the leverage allocated properly to your deal. So even if your market's moving fast, you know, because if you start scaling, you have multiple deals going on at the same time, that's multiple mortgage payments you got to make sure that you can account for, right? I think it's more like the exception is the fast, quick turn markets. That's the exception to it. Majority of the time, you want properly allocated leverage to your deal and your current situation too. That matters, right? sometimes when you're cash heavy, you can be a little bit more aggressive, and maybe you don't need as much leverage because, you know, you can move faster to get a deal. Such an important thing that I don't see people understand really. It's like they'll come like with a deal and they're squeezing on the wrong thing, squeezing us on the wrong things, right? Like the rates or the points. And majority of the time, it's not the rate and the points. You know, it's the leverage. Is the leverage properly allocated for your deal?
Another big one I see other than this is people say their LTC, oh, I'm getting 93% LTC, I'm getting, 100% LTC. What they don't realize is that every lender calculates LTC differently.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I feel like we kind of just started. It wasn't that big of a deal before, but I feel like I hear it more and more. But when someone tells me, oh yeah, or I'm getting, 93% LTC, but it's just purchase and rehab versus there's a lot of costs that go into loan to cost, right? Some lenders, like a lot of times for us, will consider the interest payments, which in this case would have been another 50,000, origination, which is another 10,000, closing costs, which is another 10,000. So you're talking about 70,000 just off of that added into your LTC calculation, where another lender's only considering purchase and rehab,
Yeah.
So understanding even how that's allocated. I think a lot of investors, they think that our industry is rubber stamped already and that it's all apples to apples, which it's definitely not. It's like apples to oranges most of the time, especially when you
A lot
factor
way to
in,
go. Yes.
how leverage is being allocated, how loan to cost is being calculated. All of those things vary lender to lender. And I don't think that a lot of investors understand that. I don't think a lot of lenders understand that at this point, because for some reason they all can't get on the same page.
No, yeah, it's still trying to get ironed out
Yeah.
in the industry. And
Yep.
hopefully it doesn't like get so standardized, right? Either like the consumer space, like conventional loans, that can, that should be a little ironed out. Like I think it's good how it is, but private lending's it's a little different. It's definitely different. I don't know if it'll ever get fully standardized, but that's the goal.
Yeah. I mean, I think if it does get
And
too
do we want it to
standardized,
be?
yeah, I mean, wasn't this industry kind of born out of things not fitting the
Sure is.
box, right? It comes out of
Yeah.
things not fitting the standardized box. And so if you standardize it too much, then there's a lot of opportunity out there. And then just it'd be like a private lending industry that gets born out of that, because if this one gets too rubber stamped, I think we're kind of like in a happy middle right now that there's still some things that can get ironed out as long as it doesn't too much.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that being said, I hope everyone got a good idea of leverage allocation, because what we're going to do next, John is actually going to help us walk through this, a deal that we've recently done and able to close and get things set up that way.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So quick breakdown. This is a deal we just closed this past week, and it was on the mainland. The borrower was used to just getting 60, 70% loan to value, and he was used to putting 30 to 40% down. He saw that we could wrap the interest in. He didn't even know money like this existed. And he reached out to us. We closed this in 15 days total from when he first submitted the lead to closing.
Also, it probably should have been faster than that if it wasn't for title and closing team trying to get on the same page of what,
Right. It would have been faster, yes. And this is the same deal that I was talking about in the beginning, where the title had issues coming to agreeing with the endorsements and type of insurance that was required. But I'll dive into that more since the beginning of the deal. But the purchase price was 3.65, rehab budget 316,500. They were buying it from the original owner, and this was a very high dollar market, so they were getting this property for a steal for that purchase price. And the play here is interesting. It's on a huge lot. So his plan is to renovate the main house, subdivide the lot into 3 lots total, and build ground up on the 2 remaining lots. So we'll be helping him refinance and get a couple of the construction loans once the time comes, because he's got to go through the permitting process now. So the first major hurdle that we ran into here was the appraisal here. As you can see, the original ARV that was estimated by the borrower was 5,550,000, and the ARV came in at 4.25 million. Pretty significant difference. Change the terms up. Initially, we were given it full 12 months wrapped interest out of the 12-month term length, and because the ARV came in lower, we had to pivot. We submitted a revision, was able to get the ARV up a little bit, but it wasn't quite at the original 5,550,000 that we had initially anticipated. But because the terms changed, we had to take out the wrapped interest, but we were still able to stick to the same interest rate given 85% loan to value, which is still a much better, much lower closing costs, cash to close than what he was planning to bring 30% down. And I actually went to lunch with this borrower on Tuesday. He came into Vegas, met up, and he made a comment, told me that he said, John, you know how many deals I've passed up because I didn't have 30 to 40% down? I wish I would have found your guys' money sooner, but now we've aligned. And in addition to that, as Kate had mentioned, the deal would have closed a little faster if the title company was used to doing these types of deals. And in this market, and we're seeing it across a couple of the markets, usually the case is the borrower chooses the title company, but in this specific market, it was the seller that had already opened title. So we were going with the seller's title company. That being said, I'm trying to think if I forgot anything else besides the title endorsement, title insurance.
Did the borrower have comps for the 5.5 mil, or like how did it come off so much?
Right.
You know, this is like $1 million difference.
Yeah.
He did have some comps. The first issue we ran into was the appraiser was only used to doing conventional loans, and she didn't understand fully what the plans with the property was.
So
Yeah.
like this is an example of when stuff like this happens, right? First, we order through the AMC, right? The third party. The AMC has networks of appraisers across the nation locally that they have onboarded to their company. So they go out and hire an appraiser. So a lot of times people get mad at us for the cost of an appraisal, or like, because we don't make money on it. That's the cost, right? So they're now, since they go through AMCs, there's a markup on these appraisals. So the appraisals are more expensive than before, because I look at some of the appraisal prices now, I'm like, geez, it's like double from when, we were taking in a lot of appraisals, getting appraisals. It's like who the AMC hires to go out there, we have no control over. So the only thing we can control is when it comes back, how to navigate, so go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. We have borrowers coming to us quite often telling us that, hey, I have this appraiser that I've worked with for years. Can you use them? Unfortunately, we have to go through an AMC. We can't pick specific appraisers and assign that specific appraisal to them. If they're already onboarded, they may be able to get the job once it's put out to the pool of the network of appraisers that the AMC is onboarded with, but we don't have full control over that.
And the MPLA is really looking at, or like they're really against these boards of appraisers in local markets. Like some lenders could have their top appraisers, and I'm pretty sure that that's still how it's going. It's just like, just be prepared that who knows, that could go away, and it could just be 100% random across the nation, so. Yeah. And I don't blame them.
Yeah, I mean, really, a good appraiser too is there to protect everybody, the
Yes.
flipper, the no buyers, the lenders, everyone. Because I've seen so many times where flippers say like, oh, it in their mind, like they believe it's worth this much, and they want the appraiser to give them that value. But then the time comes for them to sell the property after, and lo and behold, it's not worth that value, right? And then it ends up sitting forever.
And we got to remember this, like a lot of times the investor, they have a feel of their market. If they're staying true to the values, they can feel the market. But then there's also some bias. We're human, right? We want to make the deal work sometimes. So, and then a lot of times the appraiser is wrong. And there's ways to navigate that. But we gotta remember that, yes, as a professional investor, it's our job to know values, know how to get, good at pulling clear comps. But even with that, think about all of the other stuff you have to do, right? Getting your money in order, getting your partnerships in order, all that stuff. And the appraiser, their sole job is to know valuations in their market, right? So as much as we always want to point the finger at appraisers, and as much as they point it at us sometimes, you know, ultimately we're trying to just find the true worth, the true value of the property, so everyone's safe. Yeah.
One other obstacle I forgot to mention here was insurance. So typically we do go with the choice that the borrower has for insurance, but at this time we had a really tight closing timeline, 2 weeks or less, and the borrower's insurance had mentioned that it was going to take them about a week just to get back a quote for the specific builder's risk policy that the underwriting team required. So because of that, we actually have our own nationwide insurance partners where we get backup quotes in case stuff like this happens, so that we can keep continuing forward and keep that closing energy going. So luckily we did have a quote from one of our insurance partners, and they were able to perform real quick 24, 48-hour turnaround and was able to get this deal closing, stick to our timeline.
The reason why we're using this one as an example is because to have to navigate a valuation that comes in, you know, 1.3 million below what the borrower thought and still close it is a lot to say. You know, in 2 weeks. This is the one in 2 weeks, right, Johnny? Yeah.
Yeah.
You hit those curveballs pretty good and quickly. And the borrower was on it, right? Your client. Yeah.
Yeah, he was on it with sending the docs. He sent the full file in within 24 hours of me giving him the initial call.
Yeah, maybe we do that next week, is talk about what a full file looks like, talk about the curveballs that come. And then that way, you know, everyone's kind of prepared of what to expect.
And I think we should dive into the process, and we'll go step one, you know, just spend a little bit of time, and then we'll get back into the room. Like, that's what I think how we should run it, is let's get nitty gritty in the process so that people truly understand, and it matters. It matters. It'll take you to the next level. It's taken me as an investor to the next level. Once you see both sides, guys, like you start to understand you look at it different. You look at it through the lens of the appraiser, through the underwriter, even through your title person. And if we want to lead, which is one of our pillars here, is like leadership. We have to have a clear understanding and sit on the other side of the table. So sit with the appraisers, like what they probably complain a lot about us. It's like, what are they complaining about? And we want to bring harmony to all of it. So nice, guys. We didn't really have much to open to the room, but the mic's always there.
Yeah. So her questions, what's the basic formula that I need to evaluate whether or not what I'm looking at is a good or profitable deal? And what margin of profit is considered minimum and acceptable to move forward?
That's a great question. I mean, it's a great question. It's not an easy one to answer. For me, I would say for quick and dirty numbers, like once you start to really make enough offers and you're maybe a few years in, you've done a few deals, like you start to be able to know the numbers in your head. Like you can start backing out, okay, roof, floors, how much square foot of paint, this, and you can the puzzle starts to come a little clearer. But until you're there, there's all kinds of formulas that are floating out there. And I just be careful with any ironclad formula that you use to analyze your deals. I think to take a top-down approach, which is what I usually do, is because like you don't want to chase a potential deal and run full numbers and get your bids if you don't even have an offer out. You know, we just don't have time for that. So to get to a point where you're a little bit clear enough to get an offer, it's always best to dive deep into the comps and deep into the neighborhood and all of it. But then again, we're investors, and we have to worry about not just time return on our investment, but return on our time, because our time is worth a lot too, right? So if it's going to take us too much time to dig in there just to make an offer that probably won't get accepted, then we can't do that either, right? The formula out there that was kind of popular before, I don't agree with, was 70% of the after repair value, right? Most people do 70% minus the renovation budget. So if you're going to do 70% minus the renovation budget, what I found is that that's a little too aggressive. But what it's still if it's like a heavy rehab, maybe I'll do a 70% or 65. You know, I'm going to buy 65 to 60%. If it's semi, then maybe I have 65%. And if it's hitting that, then maybe I dive in a little bit more, look at some comps at face value, and then take up the most conservative and then make my offer. If the offer gets accepted, then I'll dive in deep, right? Then we dive in deep, we run full comps and all, because now it's a real deal. Now it's worth spending majority of your time to make sure that your budget is correct, your ARV is solid, you're buying it at the right as is value, your lender, you're building chemistry with your lender, like you kind of know the little curveballs that might come or may not come, right? So you just get a little bit better, but for face value, I'd say take it at percentages just to get the offer out. You want to be close because you don't want to be known as that person who just throws lowball offers, and that's why you want to I'd go off of a percentage, but then still look at comps, you know, and take the most conservative. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I would spend a lot of time running comps, just practicing on comps, you know, like what is sold recently, and look at it from the eyes of what the appraiser and what a lender will look at, right? Which is more on the conservative side. Like everyone's going to find a comp that's 2 miles down the road that's $400,000 higher, and they want to use that comp. But if there's a comp across the street or right down the road and it's more like kind, just get used to running comps off of those numbers.
Yeah.
You know, within
for sure.
25% of the square footage, around the same age of a house, right? If a house is 100 years old versus one that was built 15 years ago, most appraisers and lenders are going to look at the one that's closer to the year built. Bed bath count, 1 story, 2 story, those things.
And I'd be careful just on buying anything above 75%.
Yeah.
Like, you need margin. You need margin to refi at the very least.
Yeah. One thing I would do actually when I was wholesaling, I would look at recently sold flips, right? You can kind of tell when a house is flipped in your market, and off of that ARV, estimate what the rehab cost would be and then what your purchase price would be. And you can see on Zillow the purchase history. And there was a time where I was pretty spot on for, you know, what the last transaction was, what I was estimating the rehab to be. And I would just practice that way. I would go to different markets. I would go in my market, you know, and then if you're already talking to other investors or flippers, just ask them what their numbers were, you know, and practice that way.
You know what? This is actually a great question. We should come up with like a face value formula too, you know, like, but with knowing the eyes of the appraisers and the underwriters and the market in mind, because that's like really the main three. You gotta be thinking about your values and your comps, 1, to the market, what the market's showing you, the raw data, and 2, appraisers, and 3, underwriters, because it's same but different.
Yeah.
Great stuff. All right. I think that's it. Thanks everybody for jumping on another Aloha Friday. Have a great weekend, and we won't see you next week. We'll see you the week after. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.